right, everyone. So I'm super excited to introduce our last speaker of the night. His 3 fun facts. He is terrified of clowns, and this happened after seeing the movie It at a very young age. I'm sorry about that. He has studied and taught martial arts for close to 30 years. And he has learned energy healing, and after some initial skepticism, he's actually been practicing it for 15 years. That's really amazing. Everybody, please help me welcome Saud Juman.
Hello, hello. So I'm last but not least. So my story is going to be a little bit different. I've been doing stuff for a long time, including entrepreneurship. So I'm just going to get right into it. So the instructions said a little bit about myself. So that's me in the middle, right there. I was born in Toronto, but I grew up my first 7-8 years in a country called Guyana in South America, so I'm Guyanese. And I grew up with a single mom. So she took care of one of her and 5 of us. My amazing wife is here. We have 4 kids. I don't know how my mom did 1 on 5. I know why she lost her temper all the time. When we came back to Canada, I grew up in east of Toronto, in Scarborough. So I am Scarborough for life, yo. So one of my happiest moments of my life was actually making my high school basketball team in grade 9. So I practiced. I thought I was going to be the first brown Michael Jordan. Like I thought that. I went to my high school, Albert Campbell. I remember going up to the coach's office, 6 a.m. I got there. I saw the list of all the names. I went through, didn't see my name. I was like, shit, my life is over. Because I practiced. Like I slept with Spalding. I ate with Spalding. I'm right-handed. I dribble with my left hand, everything else. And then I'm walking out of the coach's office, and he's like, you? I'm like, me? He said, Sava. I'm like, my name's not Sava. Right? He's like, whatever, what's your name? Saud. He's like, yeah, you, Saud, right? So I made the ball team. That was like one of the happiest, my wedding, of course, and everything else, but that was one of the happiest moments of my life. And then the rest of high school, even I played some college basketball, they call me Ça va bien. So it's because of that. I got injured, blew up my ankle, and basketball slowly tapered down, couldn't play as much, had a lot of energy to get out. So in my early 20s, I had to pick one of 2 paths, a productive path or not a productive path. So I went to university, went to York University, but needed to pay my way through school, so I decided to spin records. We had vinyl back then, so I was a DJ. And then, being an entrepreneur, I thought, there's a guy at the end of the night that pays me money, calls himself the event planner or the promoter. I can just do that. Became that. End of that night, I was like, my head of security said, you know what? You should just open your own club one day. So that's what I did, right? I opened my first club around the corner from here in a little street called Pearl Street behind Royal Alexandra Theatre. Had one of the first rooftop patios in Toronto. Very large one. That's Carlito's Way for all the youngins out here. It's a good movie. You should see it. It's a nightclub scene from there. So I say I kind of picked the wrong path because that life wasn't the life that I thought it was going to be. It wasn't cash and fun and hanging out. Back then, I don't know what it's like now, but it was a whole underbelly in a city like this. And I got caught up in that. But one night, that's not what I'm here to talk about. One night, I was in one of my clubs. I'm walking through the club, and the week before, somebody had tried to rob me in my own club of some money, so I had a lot of security around me as I'm walking through. And I came by, and then the music just dipped a little bit as between 2 speakers, and I heard this guy calling me. He's like, Saud, Saud, Saud. I look over. I just kept on ignoring him. I kept on walking. And then he kept on calling my name. I looked at him, and our eyes locked. And then I realized I know this guy because I used to coach him in basketball when he was really, really young. And I was like 13, and he was like 7 or something like that. So I used to teach him how to play basketball. So then I waved him over, and then the bouncers moved aside, and they like shoved him right up to me. And he comes up to me, and he says, hey, man, you know who I am? And I said, yeah, man, I recognize you. And he said something that just shook me. He said it, and then he just left. But it was like he came to say it. He said, "You taught me basketball, and I used to look up to you." I said, "Yeah, thank you." And he said, "We all think you're the man now." Meaning, all of the kids from where I grew up knew what I was up to now. And they thought I was the man. And that made me very ashamed because I don't mind if he's giving me props for coaching in basketball. But for living this kind of like nightclub, fast life, that's really a lot of BS, that really didn't make me feel good at all. So that was the seed that got planted inside of me that said, you know what, I need to leave this. So I walked away from that because I felt when I had the fork in the road, I made a wrong choice. And so I walked away from a lot of money. And what did I learn? Money, you hear it's a cliche, but I can tell you for a fact, it doesn't buy you any happiness. And I had a really big ego, a big head. So one of the things that I kept on saying to myself over and over again is, stay humble and you won't crumble. So what did I do after that? I ended up going back to Scarborough, moving out of my nice living accommodations in downtown Toronto, moved back home with my mom. And then I ended up going to the mosque that I grew up in. And I went to the caretaker, and I asked him to just leave me in the mosque. He recognized me as a little kid. I go, leave me in the mosque at the end of the evening prayer, and then when you come back for the morning prayer, I'll be gone. So he left me there. I sat in that open area. If you've never been to a mosque, it's just a big open area with carpets, nothing else that goes on there. And I just sat there, just asking for a second chance, asking. And I did that for 10 months. Night after night after night, I kept on going back. And the one thing that came to me are two words, happy and healthy, happy and healthy. So after 10 months of that, I left. I kind of honed in on that thought of happy and health. I got a couple of jobs in a couple of startups, but then my co-founder and I, we ended up starting a healthcare startup company now 18 years ago. I think the internet says 16. I just exited from the company, but 18 years ago. So this was the first office. This was pre-Shopify, pre-Mars, pre-111, like all this stuff. A kid from Scarborough starting a tech company 18 years ago. There are no resources out there, right? It's just my mom upstairs cooking. We're in her basement, right? And these are my timelines. That's my niece and nephew. She's in university right now. He's getting ready for university. So that's how long ago that was. Norman, Oklahoma. I was building the company. 7 years into it, I felt like the man. Like, okay, that dirty life is behind me. I'm building this company. I was I think it was a Holiday Inn. In a Holiday Inn, the pressure of building this tech company was so much, even though it was succeeding, that one evening, I thought about ending it all. And I wanted to share that message tonight because I do know in my travels in the tech community, it's a big issue, mental health. So that night, I thought about taking my life. And why did I think about taking my life? Because I made a mistake. And the mistake was I mixed my business or entrepreneur identity with who I am personally, actually, in reality. And when the problem with that is when you're flying high, you feel like a king or a queen. When you're flying low, you feel like a complete loser, right? And one of the messages I'd love for you to take away is you're not your startup, you're not your next round of funding, you're not your series, whatever. Ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? You just have fun along the journey. And what am I up to now? As I mentioned, after about 18 years, we just sold the company, so I'm hanging out. And I don't usually have facial hair, but the exit was so intense that I just stopped shaving, and then I just kept on going and going and going. My wife says she liked it, so that's what counts. So the goal is to hang out with my wife and the 4 kids. We took our first trip, a long trip without the kids, to Rome earlier this year. I'm not a handy guy at all. I don't even know how to hang a picture on the wall, but she found me on our property. We live in the woods, as you can see. She found me with a chainsaw rented from Home Depot, having fun, just like cutting up a big 60-foot tree last week. So that's what I'm up to these days. And no, I'm not on the Bookface or the Twitter or anything else like that. You can email me, I'll get back to you. That's about it. Thank you.
Saud, thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. I think something that really jumps out to me is the mental health aspect that you bring up. I think a lot of people here in the room will relate to that as well. And it's something that comes up a lot in our talks, and we really built this amazing community, so you can feel free to talk to other people about it and know that you're in a room full of peers and other people are going through similar things. So Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So now we'll give a chance for you guys to ask some questions to Saud and to dig deeper into that story. So who wants to kick us off?
Thank you. So now that you've exited and you've cut down that tree, what's next? Like, next 5 years, like, what do you want to do?
The easiest thing would be to start a tech company. Our venture was
So easy.
well, our venture was bootstrapped, right, from the ground up. And so I have people already asking what's the next venture. And I think right now, my best advisor is my wife. She's been through the whole journey with me. And I'm going to take 12 months off to cut trees down and hang out with the kids and do all that stuff and just see what I want to do next. I don't know if I want to do another tech company. I have no idea.
Okay, and another question, I'm so sorry, I know this is so rude, but sort of having a family, I know women get asked this all the time, but how did you juggle, like, being a tech founder and having kids? It's a lot, right? Because your job takes so much out of you. Like, how did you have enough to give to, each of your 4 kids and your wife?
Well, I think the first answer is my wife. So because without her, it wouldn't have been possible, right? I get a lot of praise in the healthcare tech world about the exit, and they say, as the founder, I've done this. It's her and I have done this because that wouldn't have been possible. I think it takes, but the truth, it takes a toll. It takes a toll on the relationship with the kids. It takes a toll on a personal relationship, right? And at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, how much is too much, and is it worth it? That's the truth.
Thank you.
Over here, this question's weird. Over in this corner, over here.
Oh, okay. All right.
It may be really personal. You don't have to share this, but you had a quote to get yourself obviously out of the clubbing scene, which is "Stay humble, don't crumble." What got you out of the darkest corner of wanting to take your own life? What could you tell yourself at that point?
It was a fleeting. It was a moment. It was just by myself in that hotel room. So, I'm a person of faith. So I think it was just the power above. Just also, I had that thought, but then I also had the realization at that same time that of the mistake I made, and I'm still trying to keep that separate, right? I could end up. Next thing, I could be like a watercolor painter, or I don't know, a gardener or something like that. I have no idea, but I could make the same mistake of wrapping my identity together with that as well.
Hi.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I just had a question about how does your hard work relate to the world, and also how does your hard work relate to competition philosophically?
And when you say my hard work, can you clarify? How does my hard work relate to the world? What do you mean by that?
Whether you look at it in terms of your perspective as you work hard to contribute to the world in general, or you work hard just for your family, or do you work hard because it is our purpose in this life? Why do you work hard? How does your hard work relate to the world?
Got it. So at that time of solitude, that 10 months, I mentioned that thought of my mission being to impact people's health and happiness. So it manifested itself in a healthcare regulatory compliance software company. I did not grow up as a little boy in Scarborough thinking that that's what I wanted to do one day, right? But I thought about walking away from the business I just exited from maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But then one of the things I thought is, well, you know what? The impact that this company is having on the world is every day there are literally millions and millions of hospital employees and patients that are healthier and happier because of the software we built, right? So I always need to draw that direct impact to it. If somebody came along and wanted to give me $250 million to start a startup to make white shirts whiter, I wouldn't want to do that. I just would walk away from that, right?
Thanks.
Hey, you said that having like a little visitor from your past was a big motivator in kind of changing direction. Did you ever get a chance to reconnect with them after you made that change?
No, I didn't. Did not.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
just curious.
So, how do you recognize when you're on your high horse? Like, what are the signs that you look for when you're like, oh man, I'm really just acting out of my place right now? Like, how did you finally recognize that?
I think a lot of stuff starts creeping in, greed, your thoughts and your emotions being all about yourself at that, at those points. I mean, it's a constant struggle for everyone. But it really like the ego kind of surging inside of you.
Did you need to have people to tell you, or did you recognize it on your own?
Definitely needed people to tell me,
Okay.
right? Aside from my wife that I mentioned, I have a mentor for a very long time. I have a whole strategy on how to pick mentors, but he's one of my general life mentors, so he kind of helped me as well. And I have a number of morning routines that I do for several hours that keep me kind of connected to who I try to be.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi there. Was it intimidating to start a software company if there was limited software or programming training courses during that time? And if it was intimidating, how did you get around that?
You guys ever read Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill? No? Okay, some have. If you haven't, then read it, because I think the important thing is the thought. Like once you have like a clear thought and a clear mission, then the rest of the stuff starts coming towards you in a weird way. You're almost like a magnet. I'm not a developer. I don't know how to code, but my co-founder was. Just like you said, complementary skills. I drew all of the screens and everything else, but yeah, I mean, it was difficult. Not only was there nothing going on in the city, but then a series of things happened. 9/11 happened, right? So we dealt with being in Canada, trying to sell into the U.S. because we had about close to 3,000 hospitals at the end of the company using our product in the United States. So that was our biggest market. And so lots of obstacles along the way, but I just kind of view it as a challenge, right? I mean, I grew up competing in sports. So you give me a challenge, you tell me I can't do something, then I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, or try to at least. Somebody in the back.
Hi, thanks for sharing your story. That was very, very deep in one sense. And I see that you are probably a religious person, and you have a lot of religious principles and moral ethics that you sort of carry with you in terms of the choices that you make, whether it be your business choice or lifestyle choice or whatnot. But leaving the religion aside, if it's possible, it's hard. If it's incorporated into your core, it's very difficult, I understand. But nowadays, I know that everybody's looking for something that's going to achieve success, whatever that success may be. And you said in your talk that what's important is just sort of not tying your identity to what you're doing, but having fun along the way. How, let's say if you left the religion aside, what do you think are the telltale signs that one can have to say, I'm in the wrong path, I made the wrong choice? For example, a lot of people, maybe just myself, but some of us in the room may think that running a nightclub is not necessarily all that morally wrong or ethically wrong. It's something that a lot of people sort of strive to do if that's something that they're into. If you're, for example, providing fast food that causes people to be unhealthy or get fat. They don't necessarily see that as something bad. It's just a way
Sorry,
of making
sorry
a
to
living.
cut you off there. So,
So-
let's get to the
Yeah.
question.
So what do you think is the qualities or things that one may sort of use as a measurement to say I'm in the wrong path?
Great.
I think, and I don't want to come across as somebody that is up here or down here saying, stop what you're doing and become a yoga instructor. No knock to any yoga instructors out here, okay? All right? Or any of those cliches type of things, right? I think that they're just little tweaks we can do within our existing career to almost transmute what we're doing into something that's more fulfilling. So for example, I dealt with the people that used our software on a day-to-day basis and administered it were these veterans at hospitals that have been there for 45 years. And they were just super, super down and fatigued, if you will. And one of the things that I did over the 18 years when I got to know them, I realized that they were originally nurses. A lot of them were originally nurses, but now they're pushing all these papers and creating all these spreadsheets, and that's their job. So for somebody like that, it was reconnecting behind who's it, Simon Sinek, like the why or whatever it is he talks about, right? Like reconnecting to your why originally in the job that you're already in, then you can kind of just shift your compass just a little bit and you can make your days that much more fulfilling because you're spending about a third of your life working, right? 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours doing other stuff, 8 hours working, all right? So you may as well make it worthwhile. I don't know if I answered your question directly. I mean, I feel like your question requires a longer conversation, if you will, to get more context.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end things, and the speakers do stick around after the talk, so there's a great opportunity to ask more questions and get to know them better when the event ends. Thank you so much, Saud.
welcome.
Let's give
Thank
him
you.
another round of applause.